Hey friends, I'm out for my evening run. Michael D. Butler here, Beyond Publishing, bestseller status, books on the beach. And we're doing a video series for our authors about the power of your story. You know, when you think about powerful technologies that have brought us out of the dark ages and connected, really across the oceans and created this world, this flat phenomenon, it is not just the internet, it's not just the printing press, but it's the power of storytelling. And I think a lot of business people, a lot of authors, a lot of entrepreneurs forget how powerful their story really is. And I think a lot of us minimize our story. We don't realize how powerful it actually is because maybe we haven't fought in any wars or had any arms and limbs blown off, and we compare ourselves and we minimize that we don't have a PhD, or we don't have $1 million or $1 billion, or we haven't gone through a divorce or a bankruptcy or something like that or lost a child. And God forbid any of that should have to happen to us before we can capitalize on and help people with our story. Because it was in a moment like this when the clouds were overcast. I was 7 years old, and like a scene out of a Wizard of Oz movie, as Dorothy's roof was being ripped off her house. Look at that. 100 degrees in Dallas today. And I got to tell you, the rain was just coming down, something fierce here. I knew at that moment I was either going to be a minister or a meteorologist, as I feel the suction of the tornado pulling on me at 7 years old, and thinking, this is one of 3 tornadoes I lived through. I knew at that moment I was going to be a meteorologist or a minister, as I'm clutching my brother, my blanket, and my German Shepherd. Now, fortunately, obviously, I survived that night, and my brother did too. But I realized as a child that stuttered, I was going to need to reinvent myself. I was naturally outgoing, gregarious, life of the party kid, but when I turned 6 years old, something happened that I just began to stutter. I would try to speak. I always loved speaking. But when I could hear the laughs and the taunts and the jeers of my friends, my peers in my ears, I gave up on being who God called me to be. And I put it on the shelf. And I put it on the shelf for 5 or 6 years until I eventually, thank God, with some divine help and some help from my speech therapist, overcame the stuttering problem. It was in a 7th grade class, actually, Eric, that I got up and gave a speech on meteorology, and I knew I was going to have to give a speech that year, and that was the biggest speech of my life. But it was at that moment when my 12th grade peers, or my 12-year-old peers in 7th grade, gave me a standing ovation and applause for my demonstrative speech on weather forecasting, that I knew I was going to be a public speaker for the rest of my life. And I began to prepare. And I began to work with people like Dan and like Eric that are on this call, that are professional paid speakers, movie producer, minister, executive pastor. These are exciting things and people I surround myself with now in life. But I want to talk about the power of your story and the fact that we can actually build a bigger stage by flipping the mic. And one of my favorite industries is the direct sales and network marketing industry. And the people that succeed most in that industry, I've noticed over the years, and we've published a lot of their books, is people that don't talk about themselves, but they feature and share other people's stories. Have you noticed that? It doesn't matter if it's health and wellness, technology, or financial. The people that have the most incomes, the biggest houses, and the largest downlines are people that talk constantly about others and sharing their stories. Zig Ziglar was one of those guys that made you feel that way. You'd walk into a room and he'd start bragging on his employees, his kids, his family members. Everybody in the room felt awesome being around Zig. John Maxwell's that way. Les Brown's that way. And I've noticed that the people that win in life are the people that don't talk about themselves, but they feature other people's stories. So I wonder what would happen if we unplugged from the stories that are in our head or in what others are playing in the story about us, and we rewrote and reforecasted our story, our brand, by featuring other people's stories. And with that, I want to ask you a question. Leave me a comment below. Let me know, what have you learned in your walk, in your industry, in your business, be it a full-time minister, be it a full-time direct sales or network marketer, be it a business owner, or be it a TV producer like Eric, somebody like Jim in the insurance business that gets paid to speak. What have you done and what have you found is most effective in closing more sales, attracting more leads, getting people to greater and greater heights in their own life, even beyond what they thought was possible? How do you inspire greatness in others by featuring their stories? And that's the question I want to ask. So I'm on a quest this week. I'm on a quest all month long to feature awesome stories. If you know an awesome story that needs to be featured, that needs to be told, here's the most amazing thing. If you look at Facebook and you look at your friends' profiles on Facebook, they might have 2,000, 3,000, or even just 500 friends. That's okay. The most important number on Facebook is not how many friends you have, it's how many people are subscribed to you. Did you know that? You can go to some people, maybe they only have 1,000 friends, but they've got 5, 10, or 20,000 people subscribed to them. That means every time they do a post, potentially their post can show up in that many people's feeds. Now that's the exciting thing. Influence is when people listen to your story. So how do you in your business get people to listen to your stories? And what we find, it's just a hypothesis. I'm open to your feedback. If we flip the mic and interview other people on our stage, what will happen to our influence in 90 days?